foot. You keep the core tight and you connect it to the feet. Yeah, so I was just checking on the video. So your feet are pushing to the floor. Yes, you're using your feet on the floor. Your core is tight. Your core is connected through the feet also to the floor. So you have a good base from which to try to isolate this movement. Yeah, if you're relaxed all the way, it's kind of harder to completely isolate the movement. Yeah, you can still make the movement, but it's not in so much isolation to your rest of the body. So if I'm relaxed and I'm moving my rib cage, it can be a different quality movement, but it's not a good isolation necessarily. So in order to isolate the movement, again, we have to work also the rest of the body to isolate only the rib cage movement. So we are isolating. Let's try. So try to connect your core and really work the core and your feet against the floor to try to not to move any of the rest of the body and isolate only the rib cage movement. Yeah? So you really try to push the rest of the body as you're pushing the rib cage movement against the rest of the body, right? So this can bring a good quality isolation. Now the next step is to develop the range of the movement by pushing the body a little bit more. So as soon as you got this idea and coordination, then you try to isolate and use the body to produce more and more and bigger movement to really challenge yourself. And again, you don't have to only do what I do. If you have the potential in your body to do more movement than what I'm doing, you should do it. Yeah. So dance is about finding your own potential and fulfilling it. You are not trying to fulfill my potential. Yeah. You are trying to fulfill your own body's potential. So that's the idea. So when we do it in salsa to the timing, we go 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 1. So it goes in coordination with the feet. 1, right? And if you want to be a little bit more technically even precise, it's not only from side to side. Remember, your weight is on the ball of the foot. And then when I'm doing the movement, I'm a little bit twisting my spine in my ribcage. So look, if I went only side to side, it would be like this. So what I mean by twisting the spine, it means that I'm a little bit going to the diagonal here. 1, yes? So I'm going a little bit diagonal on the 1. So I'm not going only side, right? I'm a little bit going diagonal. 1. Then I'm bringing the ribcage back and going to the other side, yes? 1 and 2 and 3. And 5 and 6 and 7. And 1 and 2 and 3. And 5 and 6 and 7. Again, you're trying to isolate it against. Now, remember what we said before, that you're isolating your hips. Common mistake is that if you're not doing really all you can to fulfill your body's potential, what will happen is that you are, again, when you're doing these movements, not keeping them isolated. So even if I'm moving my hip, my rib cage is still isolated against this movement. So common mistake is that once you kind of have this idea of rib cage, for example, and you're focusing on this, you're doing the hip and rib cage at the same time. Ta, ta, ta. Instead of isolating the hip movement from the rib cage movement. Hip movement and then the rib cage, yes? Boom, boom. Because, for example, you know already the timing should go how? The rib with the feet and the hip movement is separate from the rib cage movement. So, if we are stepping, look. 1, yes? Now I'm shifting my weight first. Then I'm stepping, and on my step I do the rib cage movement. I'm shifting my weight, and then I'm isolating my rib cage movement because my core is connected to the floor. I'm isolating this movement against this core and center, yeah? So we go 1 and 2 and 3. Now, and for the hip, remember we talked about hip in relation to the rib cage. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. Again, 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. Only rib cage. 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. For more advanced dancers, there's a tip that as soon as you've done the ribcage movement to make it fluid, you can still fulfill the timing even more to continue even the ribcage movement. So we go. So it should not also be static completely. Feet can be boom, yeah. Ribcage can be, doesn't have to be accented. It can be 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. But it can be also 1 and then continue, and 3 and 4. Yes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 6 and 7. Now, watch that your shoulders don't come higher, yeah? So you try to isolate only the rib cage, yes? But keeping this posture down, yeah? So this common mistake again is that you go a little bit up and down. Yes? So try it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 6 and 7. Yes? So now let's add the shoulders, and then we do one song with the whole thing, a couple of exercises, and let me know if you have any questions. So shoulders, shoulder movement in the basic step. There are lots of different types of shoulder movements, yeah, variations, but in the basic movement you don't try to actually make the shoulder movement the actual kind of emphasis, yeah? So there's a big risk that when we teach the shoulder movement, it takes over the basic step. So it can be even very silent, yeah? Some have even the idea of not to do the shoulder movement because it can distract, yeah? And this can be also that you only use and work the rib cage. This is one idea, yeah? And I agree with it because oftentimes when we do the shoulder movement, it starts to look like this. Da, da. So the shoulder movement in the basic step should be where you have the shoulders pushed back in a good frame, yeah? And in this frame, which we oftentimes don't have time necessarily in the training teams to even think about or talk about, in this frame you should keep this clean frame and then only add it as a small little kind of final touch to the basic step. So what I mean is that you have the shoulders on your shoulder socket. So look, a good dance posture is not this way, of course. You have your shoulders rolled a little bit back and pushed down, yeah? So your shoulders should be pushed down, right? Not relaxed here, not here, not here, yeah? This is a little bit tense, yeah? What we oftentimes when we are just working all day, right? We are in this position and then come, Mikko, it feels awkward, the shoulder. So you should push the shoulder movement first, roll it back, push it to the socket so that you have a nice clean position, right? Then from this point, you start to then additionally add a little bit of shoulder movement to the back, yeah? To the back. But keeping this position, I don't mean letting it go. So push the shoulders down, and the movement is very small. You just, in this good position, you just bring it kind of like you're rolling it just tiny bit to the back, yeah? So you roll it back, roll it back. So roll it back, yes? So shoulder back, shoulder back, shoulder back. And it doesn't have to be a big movement in the beginning, basic step. So it's back, 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 back. Now, how it relates to the ribcage movement is the same way, almost, as how the hip relates to the basic step and the feet, which is that your shoulder movement is in between the steps. So for example, 1, you go with the ribcage. Then small, remember, keeping this good posture, you bring a little bit the shoulder back. Ribcage, shoulder back. Ribcage, shoulder back. Ribcage, shoulder back. So as you see, it's not overpowering the basic step, right? Because oftentimes when you do basic step, common mistake is you start to think only. Student, focus on the shoulder, and then we go. shoulder, 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 shoulder. It's not the idea. The idea is to keep a good posture, focus and emphasize and accent the rib cage more for sure, and then bring the shoulder movement into a little bit of additional slight touch. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, 8. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. So the keys: try to keep your spine straight, keep your shoulders locked in, good rib cage movement, large accented, small shoulder movement in relation also to the hips and the feet. Okay, so that's all the basic kind of building blocks just for the basic step width we covered. We had feet turnout, number 1. Yes, that's the basis to do the correct hip movement. Then the steps, making sure we have ball flat, right? And they are in a correct position, right? Then we have applying the rotation of the spine and shifting of the weight on the hip, isolating it against the upper body. Then, isolating against the upper body, we still shift the rib cage from side to side. And then from here, we then add also the shoulder and continue all the other coordination of the hips and the rib cage. So basically that's the basic step. If you have any questions, write it now. We'll cover it still, and we'll try one slow song with all the things together. I will go over, explain everything, and we'll try it together. So here we go. So only steps. 5, 6, 7. Only steps. So remember now this. Yes. Now 1 and 2 and 3, 5 and 6 and 7. Here. 1 and 2 and 3. So you can show that I'm crossing, but I'm not crossing, right? If I'm shifting the hip, it's still not crossing, right? 5, 6, 7. Hip, hips, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, and 3. Now, rib cage, look. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. There we go. 1, shoulder, hips, rib cage, 7. Now shoulders, and 5 and 6 and 7, 8. 1 and 2. Then you try to push the body. 5 and 6 and 7, 8. Keeping shoulders down. Rib cage. Use the movement. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6. Side step. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. Basic. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3. Side step. Rib cage, shoulder, hips. Basic. Suzy Goo.